Good evening, everyone. Steve here, and Ralphie as well, from the Cosmic Banter podcast. Um, I'm recording this Tuesday morning, Tuesday 29th of October 2024. The episode you're about to hear slash watch, I recorded on Saturday after listening to 3 hours, start to finish, 3 hour Trump interview on the Rogan podcast. Obviously, by now that's gone pretty viral and was pretty hyped as well. In the final 10 minutes of the interview, Trump actually brings up the topic of aliens. So I guess, I don't know, it inspired me sort of in this ADHD state to start recording and doing a bit of a reaction video. I wasn't going to release it because it came across a little cringe. It came across a little aggressive almost, you'll note. Almost as if I'm arguing with someone who doesn't believe in UFOs. Maybe that's where my head was at. Anyway, this is season 0, a pilot season. And so, look, I allow myself to have these funny little moments, and look, I'm learning, practicing, and yeah, look, I do want to do more of these sort of what are you saying? What are you saying, Ralphie? Anyway, I definitely want to do more of these types of episodes where it's just me talking about a particular topic, but I promise you future ones will be scripted. This was very much off the cuff, an immediate reaction to that exciting podcast episode. Count how many times I use the term objective fact. It is not up for argument. It is an objective fact that UFOs exist. So it's a bit cringe. It was a bit hard for me to actually listen back to it, but it is what it is. I also found it ironic. If any of you took the time to listen to the Trump episode, he talks about how he does what he calls the weave. He'll bounce from this topic to that topic, and then it'll remind him of this, and he'll go off on this tangent, this story, but he'll always bring it back around to the initial question. And that's what he calls the weave, which I thought, when I was watching this, I thought, that's a creative way of describing ADHD, Donald Trump. Look, I don't know if he has that, but yeah, I mean, the tangents are, it's funny because I sort of internally criticize that as I'm listening, as I'm watching Trump, but I do the exact same. So I apologize in advance. There's a lot of weaving on my part in this episode, but c'est la vie. So yeah, if you're in the mood for a bit of a ADHD tangent on the topic of UFOs, maybe to fall asleep to, then enjoy. If you're not in the mood for that, perhaps, I won't judge. Feel free to skip this one and perhaps listen to the next one where I interview another guest. Either way, thank you guys for listening and watching. This podcast is now available on both Spotify and YouTube. So whichever platform you're listening to or watching this on, please subscribe, follow, like the videos, comment, interact, give 5 stars on Spotify if you can. All of this stuff really helps. And one last cheeky thing, there is in the show notes a donations link. I'm obviously not at the stage, anywhere near the stage of qualifying for ad revenue from Spotify or YouTube, and nor do I have any clout for brand sponsorships. So if you'd be kind enough to check that out, any donations are welcome. I will stop rambling now, because the rest of this episode that you're going to listen to is in itself a ramble. All right. Thank you guys. Enjoy. Have a wonderful evening, and we will speak soon. Well, we won't speak because, well, we might speak. If you've had a supernatural experience, reach out to me and I'll speak to you. How about that? But if you're just a normal listener and you haven't had anything paranormal happen, we're not going to be speaking, to be honest. So you will hear from me soon. I will not be speaking to you though. That's how this relationship's going to work. All right, I sense another tangent, so I will stop. Peace.
One of the things that
there's a lot of interest in the people coming from space, you know.
Yes.
And I know you're interested.
Oh,
in
very
that.
interested in that. How much did they tell you about that?
A lot.
Really? What did they tell you? How much can you tell?
So
how's that work? Is it like super
I
top
think
secret?
I can tell, you know.
Tell me.
Well, based on Hunter Biden, I can say whatever the hell I want, right? But I interviewed a few people. It's never been my thing, I have to be honest. I have never been a believer. I have people that Area 51 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the #1 tourist attraction in the whole country or something. Area 51 in Las Vegas. Do you know that, right?
Sure, I know what it is.
So anyway, but it's a big tourist.
Do you know that, Joe?
So I interviewed jet pilots that say they saw something. If you saw them, you'd love to have them.
I've had a couple in here. Commander David Fravor.
Yeah.
I had him in, who
Ryan
had sighting in
Graves.
2004. Very compelling with
Very compelling.
video evidence, radar evidence.
Ryan
Graves.
I don't believe his name, but I interviewed jet pilots that were solid people. Perfect. I mean, great pilots, great everything. And they said, we saw things, sir, that were very strange. Like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor. It was something.
Obviously, it wasn't a comet, but
it was going four
sure.
times faster than an F-22, which is a very fast plane, you know. And it was round, which is in theory a great shape.
So when you were talking to these people, was this something that you were compelled to have conversations about? Was this your personal interest?
No, a little bit. It's not a great interest for me, but it's a little interest. I get that question as much as almost any question. Do you think that we have aliens coming, flying around?
Isn't that interesting?
What do you think?
Do people want to know?
There's no reason not to. I mean, there's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life, because...
Well, Mars, we've had probes there and rovers, and I don't think there's any life there.
Well, maybe it's life that we don't know. But
maybe there was life there at one point in time. This is a speculation about Mars, that Mars had a
bit of a waste of oxygen, this part.
A long time ago that could support life. It also had large bodies of water.
It's not more about Mars.
We've had no evidence of even bacterial life that exists on Mars.
Then there's probably the multi-universe.
Me. I mean, when I looked at what China did to this, they would have never done it with me, where they put the balloon up, and a lot of people thought for a little while that was one of these things. So,
well, that's a lot of the speculation too, that some of these drones that hover over battleships, that these are Chinese drones, and that they're not UFOs.
No, I've got to pause that. I've got to pause that there. Okay, they're not drones from China or Russia or Iran. Sorry. Even if that were the case, I think that alone would be as interesting and as terrifying if the Russians or the Chinese were in possession of this technology that defies the laws of physics as we know it. That's as interesting and as terrifying as if they were controlled by an extraterrestrial race. Because that's what you're dealing with here. That is what you're proposing. So, to be clear, it is a fact. Because not only do we have people who have testified under oath who are the most credible people, from the depths of the intelligence agencies in the US, stating that there are these crash retrieval programs. Not only do we have Commander David Fravor, Rogan brought him up earlier, Ryan Graves. We have high-level Navy and Air Force personnel, highly, highly respected and highly reputable people in these professions who wouldn't lie, who, if they lied or embellished, would lose all credibility and would no longer have a career. So that doesn't make sense. And also, if they were embellishing or if they were hallucinating or if they were misinterpreting the data and what they were seeing, then they wouldn't be fit for the role in the first instance. So we have all of this, and all of these people are saying unequivocally that that there are objects that are outmaneuvering their fighter jets, that are transmedium, that are going into water, into the ocean, and out of the ocean, with no change in acceleration, with no sound, and going at speeds that are, again, they're certainly not piloted at the very least, because the G-force alone you would be squashed to smithereens. But that's a fact. That's a fact. So let's just start with that. It's a fact that these are measurable as well, on radar, on film, military level film. These things accelerate and stop, okay? And then they move off, and then they stop, and then they can reverse, and they can go up and down in any direction, and they can go into the stratosphere, right down into the depths of the ocean. So the transmedium, which is why you're now hearing the term UAP instead of UFO. They're no longer just unidentified flying objects. They're unidentified anomalous phenomena, because they're and just that they're unidentified, but it's anomalous phenomena that we're dealing with, not just flying saucers. Okay, so that is a fact, and that is measurable, and that is documented, and that is a credible fact, and there is absolutely zero debate. It's not an opinion. It is not a conspiracy. I mean, people have testified in front of Congress. That's just scratching the surface. So that's not even a debate. That's not even an argument to have. So then the question becomes, what are these things? Are they US owned? Is there some technology that in the depths of the military, the US military, perhaps a private aerospace company, Lockheed Martin, for example, have organically created? If that's true, then they're in possession of anti-gravity energy, free energy, the implications of which change everything. We no longer have a climate crisis. We no longer have an energy crisis. I mean, it changes everything. Economics, politics, at a societal level. So that's one possibility, and the implications of that are absolutely mind-blowing. Okay. Alternatively, it's an adversary, China, Russia. That's absolutely terrifying. Okay, same implications. They're in possession of technology that would resolve so many of the globe's problems that generate division and war, and perpetuate poverty and inequalities, right? So they are in possession of that technology, and supposedly the West isn't. Well, that's an incredible national security threat. So there's the second option. The third option is that they're extraterrestrial in origin. That's pretty much your only options, your only explanations. And so we can bicker over which one of the three they are, but just think the fact that this is real. I mean, this is a president who's an ex-president and a soon-to-be, let's be honest, a soon-to-be president again, president-elect, who is saying, look, I'm not interested in this subject. It's not a huge interest of mine. I'm not a conspiracy guy or anything, but I get asked this question more than any other question. And very highly reputable Navy and Air Force pilots have told me from the horse's mouth that they're seeing these things that are seemingly impossible. And so there is something there, and that is a fact, and that is not up for debate. That is not where we are at in the conversation anymore. And if you disagree with that, or you a part of you sort of feels like you want to challenge that, I say this respectfully, because not everyone is up with the play here, and that's fine. It's a journey. But respectfully, you're well and truly behind the conversation here, because we passed that a long time ago. I would say we formally passed that in 2017 when Leslie Kean broke the front page New York Times article in December of 2017 that broke the ORSAC, or rather the ATIP investigation, and that is a whole other video in and of itself, so I won't get into that. But that was a front page New York Times article in December of 2017, where we first learned about Lou Elizondo, who is a high-level intelligence officer, who was involved in ATIP, which was an organization effort within the Pentagon set up secretly to investigate anomalous phenomena and UAP, essentially UFOs. Okay, and so that was the first domino really in modern UFO history. So you're 6 years behind. No, what's that? 7 years. 7 years behind the conversation if you don't believe this stuff doesn't exist in some fashion. We're now at the question of what is it? I would argue that from being obsessively interested in this topic, that it's pretty clear that the theory that this is technology from our adversaries is absolutely ridiculous. It also suggests, because this technology was first in the, I suppose, popular in the vernacular since the Roswell crash of 1947 in New Mexico. So it also suggests that Russia, China, Germany perhaps, in the 40s were in possession of this technology when fighter jets had only just started to be used. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, because we're not talking about something new. This is something that has been around prior to 1947. There are a number of cases, but certainly in the general consensus and the public, I suppose, dialogue, modern UFO history started with Roswell in 1947. So I don't think this is technology that our adversaries are using. Do I think possibly that there are incredibly well hidden, complexly layered parts of bureaucracy that have access to this technology, that are hidden in special access programs, and that they have been attempting to reverse engineer this technology, and they have perhaps succeeded, or they have perhaps found craft that are still intact and still able to be used. Perhaps they're able to use existing craft, and that is responsible for some of the sightings that we're seeing. Even the ones that the military, the US military and the US Navy are seeing. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what you'll find, and Trump's going to get to an interesting point here, is that this stuff goes way deeper than the government, right? Does the government know that we have UFOs or that aliens are real? Firstly, what do you mean by the government? The government is comprised of so many moving parts, so many agencies, and within those agencies, so many secretive programs. You just have to look at the congressional hearing in June of 2023 with David Grush, Commander Fravor, and Ryan Graves, to see the frustration from congressmen and congresswomen who were denied access to some of these parts of the military and Air Force that had access to footage that pilots were tipping them off to, and they were denied access. And historically, we've found that presidents themselves are also denied access, because it makes perfect sense, right? Presidents are transient. They're only guaranteed to be there for 4 years, a maximum of 8 years. Why in the hell would you let them in on something as world-changing? Well, this is as Ross Coulthart, the most respected journalist, and not just in this topic, in my opinion, but probably one of the most reputable journalists in the world, period, as he likes to put it. This is the biggest news story in all of human history. Now, the implications of it change everything: religion, the environment, society, culture, economy, war, everything, absolutely everything. So I think that there are potentially some sound reasons as to why one wouldn't want this going public, and there are some strong arguments against disclosure, national security threat, perhaps, letting Russia, Iran, China, etc. in on how much we know, or potentially exposing, when I say we, I mean America. I'm obviously not American, I'm New Zealand, but New Zealand, Australia, Canada, UK, the US were all part of the Five Eyes. So when I say we, the Five Eyes nations, the West, it potentially exposes how little we know about the phenomenon. compared to Russia, China, Iran, whatever. Now, I don't think that Russia, China, Iran know more than we do. I don't believe that, just simply because the US has had a head start on this stuff for decades. But that's a possibility. So I think there's a lot there there's a lot of solid arguments to be made as to why we can't just disclose this overnight. And when you consider that, then why in the world would they, and when I say they, that's kind of the problem. We don't know who they are. I don't think they are the Illuminati or some secretive group that are the puppet masters. No, I think it's even deeper than that. I think it's an organization. I think there's probably maybe half a dozen to a dozen gatekeepers who really genuinely know what's going on and have historic ties right back to the Manhattan Project in the 40s, the Manhattan Project being the secretive operation to create the first nuclear weapon with Dr. Robert Oppenheimer. And I think that most of those people have died, and that secret and their understanding of the phenomenon, their understanding of the UAPs that have crashed, the craft crash retrievals that have taken place, the potential of extraterrestrial bodies having been located and recovered. I think these people that know this for a fact, and not only know this, but know where they're being kept, but not only know where they're being kept, but have a level of influence over whether people find out about them or not. That number is probably between 6 and 12, half a dozen and a dozen people. So why in the world would they want to let a president who's only going to be there for a minimum of 4 years, possibly 8, in on this stuff? Especially someone like Trump with a big mouth. But I think these next 4 years are going to be interesting. Let's play the rest of this.
I did interview, let's say 3 or 4 guys and without tremendous interest, if you had them, as I said, you'd love to have them as your children. Solid, beautiful people. They said, "Sir, there's something there." You know,
there's something there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few of
They're
them.
not conspiracy guys.
Well, I mean, just the Commander David Fravor thing in 2004 off the coast of San Diego, they clocked that thing going from 50,000 feet above sea level to 50 in a second.
Yeah.
They don't know what it is.
That's tough to beat.
Yeah, they saw something in the water. It was hovering over that something that was making a disturbance in the water. They got video evidence of this thing. 2 different fighter jets with pilots in them saw it. There's, visual evidence, photographic evidence, video evidence, radar evidence. Whatever the hell it is, it moves in a way that would turn a human being into jello if they were inside of it. The G-force, no one would survive.
Oh,
so what is that? And it doesn't have a heat signature.
So obviously
they don't know
not
what their propulsion
piloted.
system was. But
when you fly in some of these jets,
I say obviously, sorry, not obvious, but to protect a pilot from said G-force, there would have to be some sort of anti-gravitational field. Hey, I'm no rocket scientist. This is all mad speculation, but obviously moving at speeds in which he's just described, no one would survive that. That alone is an obvious, pretty objectively obvious fact. So either they're unpiloted and therefore they're drones, and then whose drones are they, and what purpose are they? What is their purpose? Are they surveillance? And do we believe that these are surveillance drones from our adversaries like Russia, China, Iran? I personally highly doubt that, and that argument can be made in an entirely separate video. But I have reason to believe as well that these could very well be piloted. Well, some are, some aren't. But obviously there's some science, there's some technology there that prevents the pilots from being affected by the G-force that they'd be subject to at these speeds. But let's carry on.
These pilots have to be in great shape.
Oh, yeah. I flew with the Blue Angels once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to fly. I guess
and
it's an
F/A-18. And those are older machines.
And they're crazy.
When you fly in some of these things,
oh my God,
amazing. Yeah, but
I can imagine.
You got to be special.
But these things that these people are encountering are far superior to what we know of.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there's some military or government program that you weren't, that they didn't tell you about?
I think I had a great relationship with the military, basically. But, I didn't like certain people. I would have gotten them out if I thought, if the election was different, I would have fired, all of them quickly. Most of them I did fire. Biden should have fired every military.
Okay, and he starts to ramble. I've cut this because there's nothing, that's where the topic ends. He starts rambling into, what Biden did, what I would have done different. I would never. Okay. So anyway, that's the short clip. There's nothing new there that Trump said about the topic, but I do think it's really interesting that he brought it up. And he actually brought it up himself on Rogan in the final 10 minutes of a 3-hour podcast. I mean, I'm recording this a couple of hours after I finished listening to it, and I started listening as soon as it went live. So it's still Saturday, 26th October, New Zealand time. So we're yet to see the final sort of ratings for the show, but I think it's pretty clear, pretty fair to say that this will be one of the largest, if not the most watched and listened to podcasts in history to date. Because whether you love or hate Trump or Rogan, they just are what they are, So Rogan has the biggest media show on the planet, period. It's just an objective fact. You can't argue with that, whether you love him or hate him. And then Trump is possibly the most famous person on the planet because he is so divisive. Again, love or hate him, these are not political comments. So I just found it interesting that he would bring it up to Joe, knowing that Joe is interested in this topic. And he made a comment as well saying that, Joe, I know you more than you'd think. I may even know you more than you think because I've watched so many of your shows. My son, Barron, absolutely loves your shows. I wonder if Trump's listened to any of the interviews that Rogan has done, not just with Commander Fravor, Ryan Graves, but perhaps with Bob Lazar, perhaps with Jacques Vallée, James Fox, Jeremy Corbell, David Grush, George Knapp, to name a few. And I would wager that Joe's had enough guests on that have an interest in this topic that Trump most likely has seen some of those. I don't know if that spurred some interest or whether that came after he had already spoken with pilots. But anyway, he mentioned something interesting there. I think Joe asked a fantastic question, but you can only get so much out of Trump. You can only get so much out of every politician, but even Trump, because ego gets involved, of course, right? And he asked him just then, is it possible that there's some sort of secret layer of the military in which there's a program where these things are being hidden and you're not privy to it? Great question. I think I already know the answer. Of course, Trump has an ego, I wasn't expecting him to admit, I think so. I think they're keeping it from me. because that would suggest that he's not in control. I had a great relationship with the military. I don't think they would keep anything from. I'm sure he did have a fantastic relationship with the military. It's actually beyond that, though. It's the wrong question, or rather, he's answering the question from the wrong perspective. Joe's asking, is there a secret, compartmentalized layer of the military in which they have access to this technology and the history of UAPs? They have this absolute truth, this absolute knowledge, and that they keep it from presidents. That was the question. And so Trump's answer with, I don't think so. I have a great relationship with the military. The military is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the military. The generals, the people high up in the Pentagon, they all hear the rumors. I mean, if you and I know about this stuff, of course they do too. And they maybe they have seen some bits and bobs of evidence that suggests they know and have tangible evidence, so they can say with more confidence and conviction than you or I could that this phenomenon is real. But even they are not the be-all, end-all, right? Look up The Invisible College by Jacques Vallée. It's a book by Jacques Vallée, but it discusses this idea that earlier in the 20th century, after the war, that a select group of experts, politicians, scientists, etc., were formed, but a very small, very, very small group regardless. And they were just about as close as you could get to the ones who understand this phenomenon, know exactly what's going on. I don't know. And that's, I think, what we need to end on, is that the point is there is something going on. I don't believe it's technology that is of human origin. And that's also of the opinion of people who are experts in this field, scientists, fighter pilots, intelligence personnel, whatever. Experts from every field suggest that if this is real, if what we are seeing, which is measurable, so it is real, whatever it is, if it's real, then it's not of this earth. It can't be. And if it is being controlled by either the US or the military of another country, then that is just as incredible as saying it's piloted by aliens. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It has the same implications. The point is, its origins are extraterrestrial. That is the consensus. And yet, we're at the point where presidents, Trump is not the first. Obama has admitted this. Hillary Clinton, I know she wasn't president. When she was asked about this, she admitted there is anomalous phenomena. Bill Clinton had an interest in this. JFK had an interest in this. High-level congressmen and women. And then, of course, we have whistleblowers of the highest reputation in the intelligence community coming forward. And let alone the millions upon millions of current and historical accounts of civilians who have sighted and experienced these craft and, sorry to say it, these beings. That's where we're at. And yet, a president still can't tell us anything. Even one like Trump, who would be the person that would want to tell the public. Even he can't. There's only so much he can tell because there's only so much he has been told. I think that's the key takeaway here. And so anyone that you hear online, myself included, to be honest, I might get carried away a bit and a little dogmatic, but, I'm deeply interested in this topic, and I have been for a number of years. But anyone online, be very wary. Anyone online who tells you that they know what the truth is, be very wary of that. People that say, this is what happened, historically this happened, this is the explanation for these crafts or for this phenomenon, be very wary, because I think there's only, as I say, a handful, perhaps a dozen, half a dozen people that have a comprehensive grasp on exactly what every facet of this phenomenon includes. Beyond that, that's okay. Don't have to have an answer. It just means that it's fascinating and it's worth exploring and it's worth not shutting down. And just as you should be wary of people who claim to know the truth about the phenomenon, on the flip side, you should probably be even more wary, or equally as wary, I should say. Try not to let my bias get involved here. You should be equally wary of people who claim to be able to explain away the phenomenon with prosaic explanations. I'm tempted to say be even more wary of them, because they clearly don't know anything about this topic. They're debunkers. If you want to take an interest in this topic and actually publicly take a side, don't make a fool of yourself. I think we're well and truly past the point. Do these things exist? Yeah, they exist, and this technology, wherever it comes from, is not of human origin. I think we're well and truly past that part of the conversation. So be particularly wary of those people who shut it down immediately. Would argue they're probably not worth listening to at that point. That just immediately excludes them from any level of legitimacy in their argument. But what a time we live in, and I think especially after what he said about releasing the full JFK files, we've got another congressional hearing coming up in November on the UAP topic. I think that has just been postponed, actually, but nevertheless, the next 4 years, we're in for a wild ride. And I think whether they want it to happen or not, whoever they are, I don't think there's any one group that's controlling this. I think disclosure is going to happen, and it is already happening. It's slow, it's trickling, and it's probably for the best. As much as I'd love for Donald Trump to do a State of the Union address, State of the Nation, whatever they call it, where he stands in front of the camera at night. My fellow Americans, I stand here to tell you this evening that unequivocally we have found the existence of extraterrestrials. We are not alone. As much as I would love that, it's probably best for humanity and for society and for our own sanity and safety that this is a slow trickle. I will just say, whenever it is, in 4 years, when we're sitting here having another conversation about who's going to be the next president in 4 years' time, or maybe at the end of this decade, when you finally accept that this phenomenon is real, that at some level extraterrestrials exist, or just the simple fact that we are not the only intelligent life force in the universe and that we have interacted with other intelligent life forces, when that notion has become commonplace, just think back to this conversation, 2024, October 2024, and then just think back to 2017, when that New York Times article broke in December of 2017 by Leslie Kean. And then think back prior to that, and go back to the 90s when Bob Lazar first came out and Area 51 became part of the vernacular. And then go back to Roswell. I mean, how far do you want to take this back? And I think we should collectively apologize to all of these experiences and, quite frankly, victims of the cover-up, for telling their truth and for us ridiculing them. Just hold that thought and revisit that, come back to that. Interesting times. All right, hope everyone's well. Thanks for watching, and for more content, subscribe, rate 5 stars, like, follow. Peace.